And it took me a long time. The guy that I hated him. And don't forget, I'm a combat veteran. I was thinking evil. I was thinking. So I told my counselor at the VA one day, she asked me how I was doing. We were talking about, you're talking about your feelings. Blah, blah, feelings. Oh, feelings, right? So I said, well, I think I'm feeling better. I used to want to burn the guy's house down and sit off about 600 yards and pick his family off when they walked out. But now I think I just want to pick him off. And she's like, really? We're going to have to call. We're going to have to write that up. I said, okay. I'm speaking in hyperbole, okay? But maybe I wasn't, because in my mind, that's what I wanted to do. I was that angry. And it was so angry. I was so angry, I couldn't even think about my former employer. And you know what? Nobody that worked there had anything to do with it. The next director that came in after me had nothing to do with it. And he is my friend. He was my friend before. He's still my friend. He didn't know anything was going on. And he found out later that I was done wrong and apologized to me. And he didn't have to apologize to me. And we're friends now. But I had to go through a time when this employee by the name of Tom that did me in, who was, quote, my best friend, stabbed me in the back and done me wrong. If you even mentioned his name about me, I wanted to spit on his grave. I mean, I was mad. Now, you know what? If I saw the guy walk in, I'd shake his hand and say, how you doing? But it took me a long time to get there. I had to walk through a black period of my life, which was my last class. I'm sorry, when I teach, I just have to talk about myself, because that's the only thing I know. And what we tried to do is I was suffering, and we tried to minimize that. And we can't do that by just saying, oh, just go forgive that person. It doesn't always work that way. It's not always that easy. But I can tell you one thing. You walk around with a grudge against somebody, it's like drinking poison and expecting him to die. All you do is kill yourself. And I killed my own ministry in a way. And the bottom line is this, I wasn't fired. The bottom line is, the guy made me mad. I said, I'll quit, thinking he'll back off me. Oh, no, don't do that. That's not what we're saying. No, that's exactly what he wanted me to do. I played right into his hand. So stupid of me. So stupid. I thought I knew better. Stupid of me. I was on my own dumb fault. Now, was he wrong? You know what could have happened? What I could have done, brother? I could have said, I want an emergency meeting of the board. I want a meeting tonight. I want a vote of confidence. And I guarantee you, because I heard from several board members, they would have voted against him and put him off the board, and they'd have kept me. But you know what? Now, looking back at my life and looking at everything, God knew everything. Duh. Okay? Let me tell you what. The city of Sacramento hates the rescue mission. They hate us. They act like we're a factory building homeless people. So they do nothing to help us. They wouldn't do anything for us. They didn't respect us. They didn't like us. They made everything hard. As hard as they could make it, they wouldn't do the simplest thing to make our life easy. Okay? That's number one. Number two, they had several organizations in town who were, we call them Johnny Do-Gooders, who come in. They would feed people outside the mission because they didn't believe that we should make them listen to a message before they had the food. So they would feed them outside, right? Well, guess what they do? They bring a big old bus, give everybody sack lunch. Guess what happens? You know what happens. They eat the stuff they want. Guess where the rest of it goes? And guess who? Then, who gets blamed for the trash being on the street? The rescue mission. You know what? So I took a mission over because God sent me to where he sent me. It's a miracle that we got there. It's a whole long story. It's a whole nother class. But let me tell you something. The city loves us. And I have made it I learned from Sacramento. I'm going to make the city love us. When I got there, everybody thought this was basically the Union Gospel, we were Union Gospel Mission in Sacramento. This is United Gospel Rescue Mission. So the United Gospel Rescue Mission, if you ask anybody in the street, what do? We work with drunks. That's all they knew. Okay, the guy that was before me, I don't know what he was doing. I don't know what he was doing. Nobody knows what. I don't know what he was doing. For 28 years, he kept a job, so I figured I can do pretty good because he didn't have anything going on. And he was a friend of mine, and some of you, Jim Dunn, that's who it was. He was a good guy, nothing wrong with him, but he just was like, I don't know what he did. There was a financial mess going on. Everything was a mess. And so I said, I'm going to make this better. So I started working. It wouldn't so happen the first month I was there, we had a flood. I mean, I talk about a flood of biblical proportions flood. So we got our kitchen together. We had the smaller mission. We didn't have the mission we have now. We had a little dinky mission. We fed 10,000 meals in a week. Nobody could get food into town. We started feeding people. I didn't know what else to do. We started feeding people. We fed everybody. They opened up the Coliseum, which is next to it's like where plays come, or Randy Travis, or whoever comes, concerts. They opened that up and put everybody that got taken out of the houses into there. So we became known as the people that can feed people. Within 2 years, we had a major ice storm, shut the city down for 3 weeks, entirely down. We were totally, those giant, I call them baby dolls, those giant transmission lines. They were knocked over for as far as you could see, for as many miles as you could see. They were knocked to the ground. The ice was so thick and so bad. Guess what the rescue mission did? We had flashlights, and we were cooking. We have gas, so we could cook. Guess how many meals we fed? 10,000, you're right. So now we got put on the EMA, the emergency management. We're an emergency management team. We're the food. They know us, the food people. Every restaurant in town knows me. Nobody will give food to something without my say-so, because they don't want to have Applebee's and the next company bringing food the same day. I coordinate it all, and they know it. The newspaper loves us. Everybody loves us. The rescue mission has a great name in town. Everybody knows who we are. Everybody knows what we do. And financially, I told you I was a big Dave Ramsey guy. I run the mission the same way. We run on cash. We have no credit. Everything we own is paid for. Because God has blessed us. God has blessed us. But you know what? It took a lot of suffering for that to happen. I had to suffer. I suffered. Now, some of it was my own stupidity that I suffered. But let me tell you my suffering story. Some of you were in my class before, so you'll hear this again. But in 1999, I was riding my bike. And my wife and I were big bike riders. There was what they call I don't know what they called it, bike trail. Bike trail is what they did call it. We'd ride our bikes to the mission. The bike trail led through this really bad part of town. Brother, this Del Paso Heights, it's like the hood on steroids. It's like where our missions are. It was the hood. Here, my wife, we were laughing about this the other day. My wife and I would ride our bikes. They weren't expensive bikes, but they were expensive bikes to somebody else, maybe. I mean, maybe 30 years ago. Oh, no, it was 1999. How many years ago was that?
24.
Huh? 24 years ago. So we had like $160 bikes each. 24 years ago, that's a pretty nice bike, okay? I still have my bike. We have a bike mechanic in the mission. He just went through it for me, fixed it, everything fixed back up for me. I still have my bike. I like my bike. So anyway, we rode our bike through Del Paso Heights to where we ride to work. Not every day, but on Fridays is a dress down day. So we'd ride to work. It's 15 miles, and we'd ride it every day. I mean, every Friday we'd ride our bike to work. And I can't believe I did that. I don't know if I could do it now, but I did it then. One day we were riding for fun, and my back was hurting. It was hurting bad. Like, what's wrong with me? And I couldn't tell, and my in-laws were there. They're from Missouri. This is in Sacramento. And so my mother-in-law said, you better go check out the doctor. I wasn't one to go to the doctor much, but it was a holiday weekend. So I called the doctor. I had Kaiser. It's a big HMO, at Kaiser Permanente. So I called Kaiser, and they said, well, where I go, they can't see me, but you could go to Rancho Cordova and see them. To them, what do you call it? do you call it, internal, immediate care, not emergency, the next level. Urgent care. Well, I didn't want to go there, but it was hurting bad, and so I finally called back, okay, I'll go there. So I went to Rancho Cordova, which we called Rancho Cambodia, because it was all these Hmong people lived there, all these Vietnamese, and it's super, super bad gang. These Asian gangs are something else, and it's a really bad gang place. And nobody likes to go to Rancho, but I had to go. So I went there and saw this doctor, and they did labs on me, and they looked at my lung, and I had this spot on it, and they didn't know what it was. And I thought it was pneumonia. I had pneumonia several times that year already, and I almost died of pneumonia when I was a child. And I'm glad I didn't, because we were in England, and I wasn't part of the Anglican church, and so they weren't going to bury me unless we joined the church. I had to be baptized into the church. My mom wouldn't let them baptize me. They were going to baptize me into the Anglican church because they thought I was going to die. So thank the Lord I didn't die. I'd just been laid someplace. Who knows what happened to me? Anyway, I've suffered from that over the years, so I really didn't think a big deal about it. But what happened was, and if you have any medical, I know more from COVID, because I ended up in the hospital with that as well, but my blood gases were 98 with this big spot on my lung. That didn't mean a thing to me at the time. So they sent me home, and this was a Friday. We had a long day weekend. So Tuesday, I'm back at work. I get a call from my doctor. You need to come and see me. I'm like, yeah, I know. They said I got an appointment in 2 weeks. They said, oh, no, you need to come in today. No, they said, you need to come. Yeah, you need to come in today. And I said, well, what do you mean come in today? It's like right now. I said, okay. What? He said, they told me I have an appointment in 2 weeks. I had pneumonia. It's not a big deal. You need to come in to see me now. Okay. So I told my wife, I said, I don't know what they want, but they want me to go in right now. She didn't think much of it either, so I would go in. And they said, we found a nodule on your lung. I said, you mean that spot? And he says, yeah, it's a nodule. I said, they didn't tell me anything. What's a nodule? He said, it's just a small lump. I said, really? We need to watch it close. So he gave me a bottle of about that big full of, it's not hydros, it's 4 hydros. Anyway, it's a very big painkiller. Gave me a whole bunch of them. I'll think what it is in a minute. Not oxys, before oxys. Huh? No, before that. This was in the 90s. Quaaludes lay you out, man. I like Guido Sarducci. Okay. No, it's like a Percocet. I'll think of it. It's not Thorazine. No. It doesn't even matter. So he gave me all these drugs, and it was a controlled substance. And he told me to take 2 every 4 hours. It was like 600 milligrams, like a Percocet. So I'm taking them away. I'm taking them. Well, then I noticed I was seeing the doctor, and they're not telling me anything, but they said this nodule's growing. Okay, and we're talking a matter of weeks. So I started running out of these meds, and I started getting worse. So I started saving them back because I started getting scared I was going to run out. So I went to go get some more. Vicodin. That's what they gave me, Vicodin. So I went to go get more, and they said they're like I was a drug addict. And this was in the 90s. You have to understand, nobody knew anything about prescription drug abuse in the 90s. Remember, Kathleen? What did we deal with in the 90s? We dealt with drug addicts. I mean, we dealt with heroin addicts and drunks and crack and crank. Nobody had a prescription drug program. Nobody knew anything about it. So here I was, these Vicodins. They weren't going to give me any more. I started crying. I'm like, I can't make it without them. Well, then they sent me to another place, and I know what it was. They said they wanted me to see a surgeon. This all happened in no time flat. So I go to see this surgeon, and this is all the same day. They go see the surgeon, and I knew an operation was coming. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything. I thought it was like a little biopsy thing or something. They said no, but I did have a biopsy from this. But they said you need to go see the surgeon. So I went to go see him, and he came in. His name was Dr. Cashton, And they said, everybody here to see Dr. Cashton needs to come up to the counter and make a new appointment. He's in emergency surgery. He won't be out for the next hour. Mr. Kirk, are you here? I was there. He said, you stay. Next hour, room fills back up for the next hour's appointments. Same thing. Everybody needs to sign up. Mr. Kirk, you here? You stay. Happened 3 or 4 times. Me stay every time. So I finally get to see the doctor. He comes in with a bottle of Vicodin. I'm not kidding you about the size of that blue thing. He says, here's exactly what he says. With what you have, we'll worry about you getting off Vicodin when you feel better. So my wife starts crying. Like, what do I have? He goes, you don't know? No one's told me a thing. So he kind of clams up. I'll be in touch. So I go home. He didn't tell me anything. So I go home, and the kids had karate that night. So my wife took the kids to karate, and I was home by myself. And the phone rings. It's about 7 o'clock. The phone rings, and it's Dr. Cashton on the phone. And he goes, is this Reverend Kirk? I said, yeah, it is. He goes, I didn't want to talk to you in my office because your wife was falling apart. And he says, and you obviously weren't much better. He says, you know what you have? I said, no one's told me. He said, I got a nodule. He goes, it's not a nodule. It's the size of a softball. He says, 10 centimeters. He says, it's a malignant tumor. And he says, you're not going to live. He says, I don't know how to tell you. I just talk straight. And he goes, but the thing I've been thinking about all day, he says, you work with the homeless, and you're a minister. And he says, I smoke and I drink. He says, and I gamble. This is exactly what he said. He says, I run around. And he says, I'm 60 years old. I was 30 at the time. And he says, why does your God hate you so much? I'm like, what? He goes, I'm going to do a surgery on you. And he says, I'm going to take a rib out. Give me a second. He says, I'm going to excise this tumor, and you're going to go home. Or I'm going to open you up, and I'm going to see it's what I think it is, and I'm going to close you back up and give you less than a year to live. He says, I would tell you right now, you need to get your affairs in order. He says, because what I'm seeing doesn't look good. He says, I want to know why you can worship a God that does that to you. That's suffering. So I said, Lord, I told him, I said, Doc, I said, I can't tell you why, I can't tell you how, but I can tell you this, God's name will be glorified through this. And that was my faith. I never told my wife what the doctor said. I never told anybody what the doctor said. I never told anybody. I didn't say a word. So I went in, a couple weeks went by, and it was kind of funny because I had drawn an archery elk tag to hunt in Montana for elk, and they were doing this surgery in June. Literally the week or 2 or 3 days before my 20th wedding anniversary, we were doing the surgery. And I was saying, well, Doc, I just drew an archery elk tag in September, and I'm afraid I won't be able to pull a bow back because they were going to cut me from here, from the middle of my back all the way around. It's called a thoracotomy. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull a bow back. I said, can we wait and do the surgery later? He just looked at me and goes, you're kidding, right? He said, no, you're doing the surgery. Forget about the elk tag. You're probably not going to be here to hunt anyway. So I'm like, okay. So there was the option. They were going to open me up, take a rib, pull this thing, or see if they couldn't do anything, close me back. That's an important part of the story. So I never told my wife a thing. She just knew I was sick. She knew I was having a thoracotomy, and that's all she knew. So we go to the hospital the day of the surgery, and I break down in the parking lot. And I told her there's a folder on my desk. I had got all of our affairs, all our insurances, everything in order. There's a folder on my desk if you need it. She's like, what would I need it for? You never know. Things happen in surgery. You don't know what's going to happen. Oh, yeah. So before, when I was getting ready prep the day before surgery, every place we went, my wife was starting to wonder. Every place we went, the nurse said, how are you dealing with this? Dealing with what? Surgery? I don't know. I guess I'm going to make it or I ain't. You know? I went to see the anesthesiologist doctor. He goes, how are you dealing with this? The exact same words. So my wife started getting a feeling of, what are we dealing with? And it's not that big a deal, honey. Don't worry about it. You know, I didn't want her to worry. We had 3 kids to worry about. I didn't want her to worry. So I just told the doctor, don't you tell my wife. You tell my wife, and I'm going to come back and hang you. Okay? So I said, don't you tell my wife. Whatever. I told her, don't you tell my wife. So we got in the parking lot for the day of surgery, and I just broke down right there. I was bawling my eyes out. My wife's like, it's just a surgery. You're going to be okay. I said, I know. I said, there's a note on my desk for you, just in case. Well, what would I need that for? Just don't worry about it. There's something there. And it was all of what money we had in what account, what our insurance was, what everything she would need to live her life. And I even had the mortgage company. I had everything. I mean, I had everything. I lined it all out. And I did not give her the combination of my gun safe just in case I might need it. So, no, I did. I even gave her the combination of the gun safe. I wrote this detailed list. These are the rifles I have. This is what they're worth. Sell them for this. You can, because she wouldn't know what they're worth. You know, says here's what they're worth. Do not sell them for less than this. You know. So I go into the hospital for this surgery. I gotta hurry. And I had surgery. So that's it. I had the surgery. So I wake up in the ICU, and I've got something, the breathing tube in my mouth. What do you call it? A ventilator. I'm on a ventilator, so they put me back out. But I remember this. Then, one thing I remember is I was laying in ICU, and at the time I was a big Sacramento Kings fan, and the Kings were playing the Seattle Supersonics in the playoffs. Pam says this is true. She says, at game time, she says, I woke up, grabbed the remote, turned the game on, and sat there and stared at it. And then when the game was over, I don't know what happened. I turned it off, went back to sleep. I don't know. Wow. She says that. So, is that crazy? Anyway, so when they finally got the vent out and I could talk, I kept telling this nurse that came in, I said, ma'am, I appreciate you coming in and making me feel good at night. She put this cool cloth on my head, and it felt so good. And I said, I really appreciate it, but I need to ask you a favor. Is there any way you can do it without turning on all the lights? I said, because light wakes me up. And she says, son, there's nobody here. I said, oh yeah, there was. Last night, you were here, and you put this cool cloth on my head, and it felt good. And she goes, there was nobody here. So the next night, same thing. So I told the nurse, I said, ma'am, whoever wasn't here was here again. And I appreciate it too, because they put this cloth on my head. It felt so good. I just felt like this. I was enveloped in warmth. I mean, it was just like, I was like so happy. And so she said, nobody was in your room. I said, yes, there was. And nobody was here. Third night comes. I felt like Samuel. I'm going to find out who this is. Same thing. This cool cloth on my head. It felt so good. I finally said, who are you? And I can't tell you if I was dreaming. I can't tell you if I was awake. I can't tell you what it was. But I'm a Southern Baptist minister. And if I was a charismatic guy, you might not believe this because they see angels every day, everywhere, all over the place, flying everywhere. We're pretty stoic in our beliefs. This being was at the end of my bed. And he pulled this big sword out and stuck it right in me. And I felt it go in, and he said, everything is going to be okay. But he didn't move his mouth when he said it. He just said it, and I heard it. And he says, peace be with you. Like that, he was gone. So, I get to a room, where a two-person room. This is back when they had a lot of two-person rooms. Two-person room, and a surgical assistant came in to remove the chest tube and all that stuff, and that hurt like crazy. I mean, when the guy puts his foot on your bed to start pulling something, you know it's going to be bad. So he says, wow, he goes, that was a good surgery. I said, really? I said, I don't understand how I don't feel worse than I do. He goes, what do you mean? He says, I thought if you took a rib out of me, I would hurt. Because I'd asked him, do you put it back or what? He goes, no, you're just not going to have one. I said, but it feels like I have all my ribs. I said, it feels, I can't believe it. He's looked at me and goes, we didn't take a rib out. And I thought, dun, dun, dun. So now I'm depressed. And so they told me once I could use the restroom, I could leave. They have to make sure your guts are working. So, man, I'm a military guy. Give me a mission, I'm going to do it. So I was working. That was my goal, man. I'm getting out of there. So I get out of there. And the first thing we went home, we had a waterbed. Back when the waterbeds were real popular. Now, that wasn't working. I got in that waterbed. No, we ain't staying here. So I ended up going to my mom and dad's house, who lived close to us. And for whatever reason, my mom had a hospital bed. I don't know why she did, but she had one. So I stayed there. And so I'm actually at my dad's house. This is the Monday after I got out. The phone rings, and I pick it up. It's at my dad's house. Like, why'd you call me? And, maybe it was my dad calling me or something, whatever. He ran the mission. And it's my doctor. He goes, you're a hard guy to track down. And I said, yeah. I said, I said, I guess I know. He goes, what do you know? I said, I guess I'm dying. Because you said you couldn't take a rib. He goes, that's not why I'm calling. He goes, he says, I'm a profane man. He says, but you have a great God. And I said, I know that, but what do you mean? He says, when I opened you up, he says, your ribs were like jelly. He says, I don't know how to describe, I can't describe it. He says, they opened up. Your ribs just opened up. He says, I was able to excise the entire tumor. And he says, it was a malignant tumor. I expected you to not live long. He says, it's benign. He says, I have seen a miracle. He says, I lived all my life as a surgeon. And he says, I've seen a miracle. And I got to be there. So, suffering. What does suffering do for us? I don't know about you guys, but it changed me. Now, I still had some growing to do. But I have seen the Lord. And I have seen him work. And I have seen what he can do. And I can see what his power can do. So, when it comes to suffering, we need to realize, look at the suffering that Christ went through on the cross. I don't tell people to watch the Passion of Christ. The reason I don't tell them to watch it, it's its own little fobble I have. I'm big on the second commandment where it says, thou shalt make no other gods before me. I just don't believe, I don't believe we should make an image of God or Jesus or Christ. I don't believe we should have pictures of Christ. I don't believe it. I don't care what you do. My own personal thing, I don't do it. But I tell people to watch it. Even though I disagree with that, I watch it because, but you know what, even if you watch The Passion, it was 10 times worse than that. He says, he will not even look like a man when he's done. Like a hunk of meat. Our Savior did that for us. Why does a husband leave his wife for a secretary? I don't know. And you can't ever describe that. You don't know why. Why do we treat each other with hateful ways? I'll tell you why. Because you live in a sin-filled world. That's why we do what we do. You see, sometimes we suffer because we have sinned. There is some suffering that comes from our own sinful choices. I mean, you get drunk, you drive a car, you wreck it, you got no leg now because you did that to yourself. Sometimes we suffer. Sometimes we suffer because of laziness. Too lazy to do what we got to do. You know, there's an obvious link between sin and suffering. But I was suffering and I had no sin attached to it. I don't believe because I was sinful, God gave me cancer. I believe God gave me cancer as a proof of He is there and He is in our life and He is. Why did God heal me and not heal somebody else? I don't know. Another cause of suffering is Adam and the curse. Sometimes we just live in a cursed world. Another suffering comes from Satan. Now, I don't believe Satan. He's not omnipresent like God is. So I seriously doubt Satan's passing up 15 other people that are preaching the gospel to come to me. But he has emissaries. And he has demons. And he is a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Walks about seeking whom he may devour. I mean, you know what a lion does? He starts roaring to scare the prey. Freeze them. You know, that's why they do that. The book of Job talks about suffering. If you haven't read anything in the book of Job, you need to. Even Job, even though he handled it right, he still got mad at God, didn't he? And God finally said, "Where were you when I scooped out the ocean in my hand? Where were you when I set the boundary? Water, you're not going any farther than this. Where were you when I measured the earth with my finger? Where were you when I made the ostrich? Where were you when I made the elephant? Where were you when I made the lion?" He asked them all those questions. Where were you? What input did you have, Job? Nothing. But see, we all get that complex. Poor, pitiful me. Gloom, despair, and agony on me. Deep, dark depression, excessive misery. If it wasn't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. Gloom, despair, and agony on me. From the prophet named Buck Owens. You know, we can get into the whole thing of what God ordains and what He doesn't, but we can just talk about this. You know, suffering comes from God. We don't understand why it comes from God. We don't understand, but there is a reason that we're suffering, and we need to come to that reason, and that's what we need to work with our person. We can't shift the blame at somebody else's problem. The bottom line was this: I was really mad at that guy that stabbed me in the back. I really was mad at him. But you know what? When it really comes down to it, I caused my own problem because of my own arrogance. I was arrogant. I'm the director. I was arrogant. I did it to myself. If I quit, they'll beg me to come back. Guess what didn't happen? And here's what really funny about it was, later after I found out, you know, a couple board members came to me and they said, we were going to have a meeting and talk to you about this. But the president, his name is Vince said that you had made up a mind to quit and nothing could change it. And I never said that. But that's what he told them. So they never reached out to me because he said nothing would change it. But you know what? What I thought was bad was good. Because I'm at a better place. I'm at a place where people love me. I'm in a city where people love me. And I'm running a mission. You know what? I'm done. But I'll tell you this one thing. My goal in my whole life, I had one goal in rescue. I wanted to take Jim Varnhagen's place. I wanted to run the New York City Rescue Mission. That was my dream job. I wanted to run the New York City Rescue Mission, the oldest rescue mission in the country. I love Jim. For those you know him, he's a wonderful man. I wanted to run the New York City Rescue Mission. I had every desire. I did everything I could do to achieve the goal, to be ready when the time came. So here I am sitting in Poplar Bluff. I've been there about 5 years. I get a call from Jim Varnhagen. Literally, I got a call from Jim. He goes, I'm retiring. He says, and I want to know, will you allow me to put your name in the hat to be the director? Yeah, that's what I said. Wow. And I said, what? I want to put your name in the hat to be the director. I said, wow. I thought, what I dreamed of. I said, I've got to pray about it. Then I almost hung up and I said, wait a minute. I don't have to pray about it. God's got me where I'm supposed to be. I'm where I'm supposed to be. My people love me where I'm at. I'm where I'm supposed to be. I don't need the bigger place. I'll stay in my little town. I said, besides that, I got pigs. You gonna let me have pigs in New York City? He goes, no, you're gonna have to live in New Jersey and take the train in every day. I says, but we pay for all that. I said, okay. So he didn't let it go. He asked me 2 or 3 more times. I said no. Finally, his board chairman called my board chairman and asked him if they would release me from my contract. I don't have a contract, but that's how they said it. Would you release me from my contract? My board president calls me, are you wanting to go someplace? I said, what are you talking about? You want to go to New York City? I said, no. Well, their board chairman wants to know if we'll release you to go. I said, you don't have to worry about it. I don't want to go anywhere. He goes, okay. He says, everything's okay, right? Everything's fine. I'm happy as we have a saying where we're from. I'm as happy as frog hair cut 3 ways. Okay? That's pretty fine. Anyway, because when you're satisfied where you're at and you've gone through your suffering of where you're at, you know what? Let me tell you what the easiest thing to do is quit. Easiest thing to do is quit. You know what a dead fish can do? It can go downstream. You know what a leaf can do? It can go downstream. You know what goes upstream? Live fish. Dead fish, they go wherever the current takes them. And you know, when we realize the impact of what God can do to a life that just says, I want to serve you. Lamont, I don't know where God's going to take you, but big dreams for you, man. You might be the director one day. Oh, that never happened. You never know. Tom wasn't always there. There's somebody there before him. I remember Tom when he was in Detroit, and I remember when he was at Nell Trotter. I've known Tom a long time. You know what? I'll die in Poplar Bluff, and I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay. And God might move me. God might have another ministry for me. I don't know what it might be. Maybe it's teaching. I don't think so. But you never know. Let me tell you something. God can take your suffering and turn it into a gold mine. It's how do you apply what God has given you? And I tell you the same thing I told the last class. Okay? I don't know how to teach without bearing my heart. I tell you private things that I don't tell other people because you're my family. The rescue is my family. You all rescue people are my family. The closest family I have. You know, I've got my whole family's not white. I got brown people in my family too. My grandkids remind me all the time that they're lucky because they're brown and I'm peach. So I love my African princesses. My daughter married a Muslim from Africa. And I'm like, everybody says, how does a Baptist preacher's daughter marry a Muslim? Especially a guy that shot Muslims. I'm like this. You know what you tell 30-year-old children, Lenora? Nothing. And I wish he wasn't a Muslim. But I can tell you one thing. He's a good man. And he loves my daughter. And he loves my grandkids. He's an engineer and she's an engineer. And what really makes you sick? Between the two of them, they make $350,000 a year. Doesn't that just make you sick? Doesn't that make you sick? Make me jealous. Makes me a little bit jealous. But to live in California, and it takes $350,000 a year to live in California. Probably takes the same thing to live in New Jersey or wherever you guys live. So, the Lord is good, amen? Amen. Amen. Father, thank you for my friends. Thank you for our suffering. May we add it to our hearts for wisdom. In Jesus' name.
Amen.